And especially if it might save some time with the MERO. I don't know. People
All right, we're recording.
All right, welcome everyone. Food and Farm Education Working Group. We have a pretty full agenda today. Monique's going to lead the way with some of the beginning parts here.
Do we want to do a quick round, just name an organization so we're all on the same page? I know there's only a few of us, but we may not know each other. I can start. My name is Monique and I'm the coordinator for the Pueblo Food Project. Howdy. Sarah, why don't you
next? Yeah. My name is Sarah and I'm the communications specialist at Springside Cheese.
Awesome.
Shall I go?
Mm-hmm.
My name is Rebecca, and I'm the Adult Learning and Literacy Program Administrator for the Pueblo Library District.
Cool.
Great, and I am Dr. Kelly Gelhoff with Perpetual Harvest, a local sustainability consulting company. All right, so we're gonna dig in today, and I have a little bit to share about farm to school movement and getting your input about how we can try to catalyze that with or without this grant. But in the meantime, I'm excited to hear about the Pueblo Food Project structure for decision making and building some transparency with all the working groups and really empowering all the people who are involved to have a voice in the decision making process.
Okay, so I'm going to open up this document and you all have it there in the agenda as well to review in your own time if you feel the need. But essentially, we are developing a decision-making framework that will be applied across all Pueblo Food Project working groups and initiatives as it relates to spending money out of our $200,000 grant. I think there are situations where we would utilize this decision-making framework in not relation to the $200,000. Perhaps it's another bucket of money, perhaps it's a strategic direction that the group is thinking about going in, but this particular framework was written specifically to respond to how we want to spend money out of the grant. So the characteristics of the framework are that it's transparent, that it's inclusive, and that it's community-centric. The kinds of decisions that we should be discussing, as I just mentioned, are really as it relates to the grant and where there's some gray area. I'll give you two examples. The top line item in the budget is the coordinator role. That's me. There's really no discussion around whether or not there should be a coordinator, right? So we don't need to use our decision-making framework to say, do we or do we not want a coordinator? But we could institute a decision-making framework around what that coordinator's role would be or who that coordinator would be. But the fact of, are we going to have one or not, that's not a time to use the decision-making framework. More, it's where activities are less defined. So you'll see another example, coalition development and engagement. We have $40,000 in both year 1 and year 2. To kind of spend on coalition development and engagement. But we did not have to say at the time of submitting the application, this is exactly what we're going to do with that money. And so it's an open bucket for us to use. And in order for us to get the biggest bang for the buck and for it really to be a community-driven effort, I want folks to be able to have a say in how this money gets spent. So that's why we're making this framework. And again, it'll be applied across all of the working groups. So the features of the framework are that kind of like the main call outs, the working group that is most connected to the work, the proposal, or the decision should be the ones that make that decision initially and put together the recommendation. Council members will have oversight on all of the decisions being made. And then there will be participation from the coalition for every single decision that's put out there. So for example, the food economy working group can't make a decision in a vacuum and the council doesn't know about it. The council can't make a decision and the broader coalition doesn't know about it. It's, you know, the same rules apply to everyone across the range. It doesn't matter what group you fall in. All of the decisions will be tracked via an online voting system. So we're not going to get in the habit of like, raise your hand if you're a yes to this. No, we want everything to be tracked. We want people to feel like they can vote the way they would vote if they were doing it in private, same as they were doing it in public. You know, we don't want people to be influenced by other people's thoughts and decisions. So you get your vote, you get to do it how you want, and it'll be done electronically. And here, I'm not going to go through all three of these examples because they're pretty similar, but let's go through this top one, the potential decision tree for a working group led initiative. So working group members develop an idea that requires spending. The working group develops the concept and the budget request specifically that aligns to that project or spending. And then the working group votes on that proposal internally. If 51% or more of the working group votes yes, then the idea moves forward and it gets proposed to the Pueblo Food Council. The Pueblo Food Council requires a 2/3 vote to yes for any proposal to actually get funded. And that 2/3 number is in the Pueblo Food Council charter. It was written and kind of conferred before this decision-making framework came about. So that's why it's different from the 51%. So an example of how this might work, and I'll use this group as an example. Let's say that we wanted to purchase garden supplies for a specific community. The food and farm literacy and education working group would come up with a budget. They'd come up with the project concept, and then internally this group would vote on it, yes or no. If the proposal passes the working group, then it goes to the council and the council gets to vote yes or no. And if it's a yes vote, the working group gets to move forward with the initiative. So this will be the process across all of the working groups. Everyone will have to follow the same structure. And there might be cases where it's not an individual working group conversation or decision, but perhaps it's coalition wide. The best example I can think of is like a coalition-wide equity training. So we were fortunate enough to receive free training on the intercultural development inventory paid for by the Colorado Health Foundation. But let's say our coalition decides we want to go deeper on one specific aspect of this work. In that case, a proposal would be developed kind of by like the project lead. Oftentimes it'll be me. And then the whole coalition will get to vote. So not just an individual working group, but all, 200 and some members we have in our mailing list will get an email that says vote on this initiative. And if people vote, great. And if they don't, fine. But 51% or more of the total people that voted, that would get us to the yes. And then it would move forward to the council. Now let's say, for example, the council votes no. Let's say the working group puts forward an idea and the council says, no, or, Well, that's not good enough. We're not going to just let it be a no. The council needs to provide specific feedback back to the working group as to why a no decision was reached, what further questions need to be answered, or what details were missing to actually get to yes. And let's say that the working group receives that written feedback and we're still kind of unsure, well, we don't really get where you're coming from, we'd love a conversation. Then every effort will be made for at least one council member, if not more, to have a live conversation with the working group. And that will be scheduled in a super timely manner so that folks can really get clear on like, well, what about this didn't quite land, so that we can adjust if we still think it's a priority. So just letting folks know that there's definitely a mechanism in there to get more feedback. It doesn't mean it's quote unquote dead in the water. It just means there's probably some more questions that need to be answered. Any spending over $5,000 requires an RFP or cost analysis based on the city's procurement process. The Pueblo Food Project is, let me say that the other way around. The city of Pueblo is the fiscal sponsor for the Pueblo Food Project. So we have to follow their kind of spending rules. And that means anything over $5,000, we have to have an RFP or cost analysis. So in the case where that is required, an RFP review committee will be established. That will include one council member, the co-chair of the working group putting the proposal forward, and then at least one other coalition member. I will very likely participate in every single RFP process. So that would be the minimum 3, but hopefully others are interested. And then all of the RFPs or quotes will be shared. There will be an opportunity to discuss them before folks score their RFP. Then RFP reviewers will score the RFP, and then the highest score wins the bid. So that's just kind of the process on that. And just the last note, I've been using the word working group throughout, but in some cases it might not be a quote unquote working group. It might be the youth council. It might be a host committee. So whomever the lead group is for a particular project, they're responsible for developing the concept, the proposal, and the budget that then gets voted on. And then if successful within their own group, passed on to the Pueblo Food Council. So that's the kind of the quick version of what I hope to be a very effective process and transparent one for the group. And yeah, open it up now to conversation.
I was lucky and privy to hear this in the food access group yesterday, but I feel like it's a really great idea and a perfect way to keep momentum and to keep fairness. And again, like continuing that community buy-in, like when we are here, we matter. It's really awesome. Thank you.
Other thoughts? They can be good, bad, ugly. Really open to feedback here, because we want to, a framework means we're going to lay it down and put it into use. So I'm hoping that we make it what we want it to be before we actually say this is official. So yeah, Sarah and Rebecca, just curious what you think.
I mean, I guess, I think that it's amazing. I'm glad that I'm plugged into what's happening. I mean, this isn't completely related to this conversation, but I do think that it illustrates a value, which is community inclusivity, which is so important, especially right now when it comes to food. And so I'm so happy this project's happening, and I'm happy that sometimes COVID has a silver lining, and right now I have a little bit of more time than I normally would. So I'm able to be involved. So I'm really excited to hear more about what's happening, to give a voice and to see how I can connect, the adult learners and at-risk people in the community that I work with to food literacy. And so I just think it sounds fantastic. I mean, transparency, community-centric, inclusivity. I mean, it's great. It sounds wonderful. I don't have anything more specific than that, but I like the way it sounds.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Rebecca. I think it's definitely, it's important to include everybody and their say and everything. And I think you've done a really good job with that. And then this group, education and literacy, it's important. As far as Springside, we want to communicate like the importance of where our food is coming from and localizing that food. So buying local and stuff like that. So this gives everybody a chance to kind of provide whatever they want. And then the voting system, it seems fair to me.
And I'd just like to add very quickly that I think one of the most valuable things that this does is, as Kelly mentioned, is that it brings together these voices concerned with the same issue, but in these really different areas of our community. And I feel like that's something that's lacked so much in Pueblo. So that kind of leadership is so needed. So I'm so happy to see so many people showing up for that. And so it's just really, really cool.
All right. Lindy, you've had a night to moodle on it. Any thoughts from you?
No, I'm driving back from grocery shopping. I apologize, but I think it's great hearing it a second time, having a clear process that we can always provide the outline of how that works to somebody if they had a question in the community, besides it, respecting all of our input, all of us that want to be involved.
All right.
Yeah, I'm glad we all have our appreciative lens on. Did anyone have any critical points or anything? Like the 51% is enough majority? Do you all think that's positive? Okay, that's the only thing I think is our group might have the potential to want to host many projects that might have budgets attached to them. So I'm glad that we can set that precedent up front.
Okie doke. Well, I'm changing the I'm changing the agenda real time because the next item on the list is the Food and Ag Summit for 2020 and 2021. I've been clocked on that already. 2021, definitely 2021. Yeah, so I sent out an email last week calling for volunteers for the host committee to kind of join in planning the conference. And it sounds like from other working groups, I have a group of about 6 now who are interested in really like taking the lead on planning the next summit. So this is just a friendly reminder here. If folks are interested in planning the Food and Ag Summit for next year, let me know and I will add you to that host committee initial conversation. It'll take place sometime in November. I can't say if it's going to be right before the Thanksgiving holiday or if it's going to be after, but it'll happen before December. That's what I can promise. So this is just putting a note out to say if you want to join the party, let me know.
Okay.
Can you explain what the Food and Ag Summit entails?
Sure. Yeah. So in 2019, October 2019, there was a big 2-day event where Walter Robb was in town and some folks from Denver were here and lots of community members participated at the Water Tower Place. And it was, a conference day kind of focused on all different things food and ag. Here in our community, as well as a pitch competition, as well as some tabletop displays. Springside Cheese, of course, was a very big supporter and sponsored, not only gave a donation to sponsor the event, but also provided snacks for folks to enjoy during the day. And it was really just an opportunity for folks to get in a room and do that networking piece, but also hear from kind of different movers and shakers in the space on what's going on. So there was a water panel, and like I said, there was a pitch competition, and there was an update on the project, etc. And the goal was for that to happen annually. But it happened late in 2019. And one of the biggest piece of feedback was that farmers were not able to participate because it was right during harvest. And so the feedback was, we should be more mindful about the timing if we want farmer participation. And so kind of led us to our right, January to very end of February is kind of our window before farm season. And then, late October to December is kind of our window after farm season, but we know that the holidays get a little crazy. So the thought was perhaps it should be a virtual conference happening in Q1 2021. But there was some discussion in one of the other working groups that, well, maybe that's not the best timing. And so now the host committee is just going to have to decide when they want that conference to be. But essentially it's a networking event and a showcase of what's happening here in the food space. If I have my druthers, there will be an award attached as well. because I don't think we've ever had like a food systems leadership award kind of showcased here in Pueblo. And I think that's really important for everyone who's doing super great work to get recognized, but I'm only one person on the host committee, so we'll see if I can't pitch that well enough to make it land.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You can add me to that host committee.
All right. I will do that.
If anyone else wants to join, let us know.
This is Lindy. I'm interested. I'm just worried about overcommitting to too many things. So I'll join the initial meeting and go from there, if that's okay.
All righty.
You can put down that I'm interested, but I have to kind of check with my schedule and everything. So I am interested though.
Okie dokie.
I would say same. Definitely interested, but I need to evaluate time commitment.
All right, I'm gonna put a star by all of you. That way in our first meeting, we can acknowledge these folks are just window shopping for now. They may come back and buy, and they may.
We're
leave
going
you
to
with nothing.
tap you for every brainstorm sap that you have when we first meeting, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I'm
really
just
the
kidding.
reality is a virtual event in terms of planning is just so much more straightforward in many ways compared to a live full day function. So I have a feeling that it's really going to be about what's going to make it engaging, what's going to make it juicy online, how are we going to, get people to sign up given that is an online gig. So it'll be interesting, but there are lots of people who have kind of raised their hand after this second plea. So if you can't make it or it seems too much, then it's no big deal. But I'll definitely include y'all in the first conversation.
Great.
Awesome.
Kelly, you want to take it away?
Yeah, let me segue briefly into this grant opportunity through the USDA that we're considering looking into, and that there's actually 4 different pathways of opportunity, and I think at least 3 out of 4 are relevant to our food project work here. But before I dig into those 4 parts, I just want to read a quick thing about the farm to school. What are we trying to do here? And 1 second. We're trying to bring more locally sourced fresh fruits and vegetables into school cafeterias, as well as procuring local sourced, minimally processed main meal items. So the entire school meal is representatives of regional options. Also, the USDA considers farm to school inclusive of many types of producers, such as farmers, ranchers, fishermen, as well as other types of food businesses, processors, manufacturers, distributors, and value-added operations. And that we're looking at adding nutritional-based educational efforts, including standards-based curriculum, a whole host of hands-on experiential activities such as school gardens, field trips to local farms, and cooking classes. So there's a lot of different approaches to how to make this a reality for us, but this grant is focused on 3 things: the action plan of how to create farm to school movement for the whole county would be one option. Option 2 would be boosting the agriculture education curriculum, and choice 3 was an edible garden project and choosing a few different school sites to support their sustainable gardens that last. And then there was a 4th one that was a little harder for me to see a fit for Pueblo, as the producer trainings around getting the farmers to put the procurement of their goods into the nutrition services supply chain. So I think it will take some time to really dig into why we would want to identify one over the other, but I wanted to open that discussion up to this group if not today, then to the next meeting, when I can present it in a more specific proposal.
Well, I think the application is due December 16th, right?
I thought it was January 8th. Am I wrong?
I don't know.
Okay.
It could be
well,
January. For some reason, I thought it was mid-December, but that would be good if it is January. But yeah, I
so
think we
there-
can talk about those options. I mean, I think we can talk about them. You gave a good overview.
Okay, great. Well, I wanted this to be brought up because it would kind of go in tandem with what we're already doing with the CHF grant and how we have an objective for this group to propose to the districts by next summer, some kind of strategic plan for institutionalizing gardens or food system education. Am I correct with that, Monique?
That's right.
So my specific interest all these years has been the gardens working towards the urban farming career pathway, but there's so many other parts of food services, business skills, and nutrition that need to be added into it, as well as food safety principles. I would like to see this money really for the action plan. That would be ideal, I think, because then we would have a way to plan ahead for how does everyone at a school in our county get access to this somehow. But of course, the other budgets might be easier. I think we'll have to look at the feasibility of the application as well. These USDA grants are daunting. It does require a 25 to 35% match. So it's a $50,000 to $100,000 window of opportunity ask.
Wow.
Does it specify when that match has to be obtained? Like, could we use our implementation funds if they all aligned?
Interesting. Well, you do need the letters of support in with the grant application. You're right. You might not be able to need the funding accessible until the following summer when the grant was funding came through.
My gut is saying to focus on the curriculum development, and I'll tell you why. I don't think that we have enough support from the mix of local food producers that we would need to get the action plan money.
Okay.
I don't think
Right.
that the
Comparing
farms-
Pueblo to other places that are successful. I agree with that statement.
And from my understanding, there was a pretty big push to do an institutional procurement workshop here with outside money last year, and they only had 2 farmers show up. And that
Oh.
was like saying, calling people, paying for lunch, giving them money for gas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow, a bribery attempt. And I did attend that workshop, Live Well, hosted at South High School. And we
And they
had
did
more
a-
support from Alamosa and
Exactly.
their
And
co-op.
they did a lot of direct one-on-one follow-up through Rocky Mountain Farmers Union and through the Colorado Fruit and Veg Growers Association, and like all of the different ways that people could ask these guys to come to the meeting, but they didn't. And to me, that signals that they just aren't really interested in that line of business.
Right.
Similarly, the quote requests that we put out for the community pantry, I basically said, hey, we're ready to write you up to $8,000 check for anything you have to sell at the end of the season, and only 2 farmers even responded.
They couldn't even do pumpkins. Oh, it seems ridiculous when I see that abundance, as we drive through.
So, and it's not to say, I mean, maybe those pumpkins were
Ironic.
already sold, we don't know what the reason was. I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to give a reason. I don't know what it was, but if they're looking at like, what is the true community commitment? I think we're going to have an easier time creating the narrative and being really authentic around, we want this education for our students, and
Great.
figuring out partners that we can do it with on 5th day even. So it doesn't have to be in a classroom setting. because, you
Well,
know,
good. I wanted to, yeah, support what was started with the CSU Master Gardener Extension Office volunteers, and also try to be true to what we wrote in the last USDA grant around the Mineral Palace 5th day programming, that was our end goal. And I want to also just mention briefly that what's more important to me than just having a couple of edible gardens at schools, because that really doesn't create a food supply chain or anything, is something like what I've heard about in New York called Teens for Food Justice, that they were like looking to expand to Denver. And if we had something like that where we had greenhouses that actually produced a large amount of local food, and the high schoolers like AMAC could be the interns, you know, that's the end goal for having procurement that really gets into nutritional services, is a supply chain that doesn't exist yet. So that's a lot more than this grant can support. But if we have that kind of end goal around the curriculum, I think we can probably pull this one off, or at least start that proposal and be working towards the one for next summer. And it won't be a waste, even if we don't get this award. Okay. Any other input before we move on to our talking points about how to promote and recruit people for this great group?
I mean, I would just like to say that as someone who did teach high school here locally, and someone who formerly owned a restaurant in Philadelphia and was part of community gardening there, I mean, I agree with you. I love the idea of edible gardens, but I liked the action plan idea too, but without the support. And then the curriculum is certainly the best option, it seems to me as well, because then you're actually creating systemic change that has a lot more potential. So that sounds really exciting.
yeah, I guess we'll all have to take a deeper look at what specifically the action plan involves, because it might be that they go hand in hand, you know? It might be that the curriculum, a part of it is focused on technical training, and the action plan is to give a promised contract to first and beginning farmers coming out of technical training from the curriculum development. So, I mean, I guess there are definitely ways that we could look at it, but if it's about, oh, you have this great farming community and they just can't figure out how to get into the school system, let's make a plan. I don't really know that that's our community problem, but we should look at it.
Who are the farmers that did show up? Can you reveal?
Maros and Milberger.
Huh. I mean, those are big ones. Hobbs didn't? Hobbs didn't. Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Alrighty. So these talking points, I'm going to bounce into this document as well. Essentially in our big meeting next week, so each of the large coalition meetings, we do some type of coalition capacity building exercise. So last month we focused on how to identify systems changes. The month before that, we focused on our intercultural development inventory. And this month we're going to let the advocacy group kind of take the stage and really introduce some key talking points to represent the Pueblo Food Project. So it would be great if everyone who's a coalition member, when asked about the Pueblo Food Project, felt super confident and knew exactly what to say to explain what we're all about in an elevator pitch, or that, you know, that 90-second conversation. And then if they get that sort of follow-up question, well, what you said something that I really like there, can you tell me more? They have a little bit of a teaser to kind of continue the conversation. And so the advocacy group did a great job in putting together 5 talking points that are representative of our strategic priorities and of the work that the working groups are doing. And so we wanted to just make sure that point number 3 feels really good and authentic to this group, because it's the one that most closely aligns to this particular group's work. So point 3 is bring food and farm literacy and education into public school classrooms, as well as community-based education. And the teasers there would be raise awareness of farm to fork connections and benefits of reducing food miles, encourage entry-level food system work skills, increase access to community gardens and nutrition-based lessons, promoting community-based food education opportunities. I'm just going to do a little grammar edit there. You can see some of these are written by many people, so we'll have to go through and make it one voice. But yeah, so what do folks think about this talking point? Is there anything that you'd like to edit, change, adjust, remove, add? Because we will be presenting all 5 to the larger coalition next week, and we'll be doing an exercise to get folks trained up.
Yeah, I know that we don't have like a working definition of food and farm literacy yet, but with these bullet points, we're trying to find some things that we can create metrics around, or that we have a common action goals. So I'm curious if there's anything here that is either vague or unclear, or if there's anything that's missing, or anything that's inspiring.
Yeah, that's definitely why we're bringing it up for conversation. And I will say that I know that you mentioned this before regarding the metrics. I don't necessarily believe that these talking points have to allude to metrics. I think it's really just for people to get a sense of like what we're up to. Whereas to me, the metrics is kind of more in the evaluative learning stage. And this is like, I've never heard of the Pueblo Food Project before. And then someone can say, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, I can take off the strategy lens for a minute.
Yeah, it's coming out of the advocacy group, not the evaluation group, if you want to put it that way. But to your point, that doesn't mean we can't revise these to have more of like a tangible feel, but just want us all to be clear on the purpose of these talking points. It's really for that first time conversation.
Also, maybe the order of them could be ranked differently. I don't know. I thought maybe the word connections in the first bullet point could be rephrased.
How about that? Raise awareness of farm to fork and the benefits of going local.
Yeah, we want to induce a cultural shift around that mentality. I like that. Okay.
And I guess, the main question here is, do we feel comfortable with this lead statement? Bring food and farm literacy and education into public school classrooms, as well as community-based education. I think it needs to be like language differently because it's not really a flowy sentence.
What if you said
Yeah.
community-based settings
There you go.
or just community settings?
Community settings is, I think, better.
I don't like bring. I wonder if there's another word for that.
Initiate or
Integrate?
great.
Good one. Integrate.
Ingratiate? No, just kidding.
Guess we need that public school education, huh?
Okay.
I think that maybe the last two could be combined, the bullet points. So increase access to community gardens and
Promote.
community-based food education.
Okay.
If you think nutrition fits well under food education, I think it does.
Love it.
Yeah, there we go.
Woo!
Okay.
What about encourage entry-level food system work skills? Develop.
Or what about like a pathway? The word pathways.
Explore.
Or like create a pathway to entry-level food system jobs.
I like that. That's active.
And make it like pathways, because there's the cooking
Yeah.
kind and the growing kind and the entrepreneurial stuff too. You know,
Maybe jobs.
create does take a lot of responsibility on this group though, if you want to think about support. But okay, we are doing it.
Right. Okay, and there will be an opportunity in the larger meeting to kind of wordsmith this, and I do want to get to MERO with the 13 minutes that we have left. But already I think these are much better than what we started with, so that was the point. And like I
Excellent.
said, we'll be going over these and kind of doing a little bit of training on them next week. Okay, so now we're gonna have some fun. Put on your patience hat, put on your inquisitive learner hat, and click the link that I have entered in the chat. Welcome to my lair.
It's working better for me today than it did yesterday.
Hey, see?
Maybe it was computer updates.
Okay, so this is, it's called MERO. It's a very powerful data visualization tool. It is used primarily by computer programmers and folks really focusing on like cycle optimization. So it's meant to be a little bit intense, but we're going to master this tool eventually and use it to help us really lay out all of the fabulous assets we already have in our community, understand what the relationships are across those assets, and then make a map, an actual map that says this is what the Pueblo food system really looks like. So before we jump into that, let's play around with the tool just a little bit. If you're using a trackpad on a laptop, you'll hold 2 fingers down to move the board. So everyone practice just moving the board around. You want to kind of hold down and a little hand will pop up and you're just moving the board around.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And then let's practice zooming in and zooming out. So you're going to use your fingers just like you're on a smartphone and spread out and in to kind of change the zoom. All right. And take your view so that really all you're looking at is this top frame here that says practice food and farm literacy and education. So I see Kelly's here, Trailblazers nearby. There we go. Innovator, you're in. Got it. Love it. Okay. And now let's talk about the menu on the left-hand side of your screen. The very top is an arrow. It's your select tool. When you go back and forth between the arrow, it's your hand to either move the whole board or the arrow to help you touch an individual object. You can always press escape if you want to untouch an object. Then you'll see a T for text. That's your cursor that allows you to type anywhere on the board. So let's practice first with the cursor. Grab your T and come into the frame that says practice and just type your name. And you can change the font size or you can zoom in, whichever is going to be easier for you to do, but everyone just practice your name. All right, I see Rebecca, I see Kelly, I see Sarah, I see Lindy. Woo! Okay, next go back over to your menu and you'll notice a square with kind of the triangle folded up. That's the sticky. Let's go right under it and grab a shape. So pick any shape that you want. You're gonna hold down on the shape that you choose after you select it and bring it over into the space. Just make any shape.
Oh, shape.
It's the square right under the sticky tab. So I see some stars. I'm into it. I got mine in there. Let's see. Sarah, is that your star? I think we've all got a star. Lindy, did you manage a shape? There you go. Okay, cool. All right, good job. Now we're going to move on and you're going to go to the square that has the little folded corner. That's our sticky note. So pick your favorite color, click on your sticky note. I think I'll be pink today, and then bring it over into the frame. Drop your sticky note and then write a note there. This has been my favorite. I'm sticky. All right.
What did I do?
Curd is the word. Okay. Everyone has managed a sticky and is figuring out how to type in there. Rebecca, is one of these stickies yours?
Yes, this PFP is awesome. That's mine.
Okay, Lindy, so that's you. All right, wasn't sure, got it. Okay, so now I want you, this is an advanced move. Click on your sticky and the menu is gonna pop up right above your sticky and there's a little icon that looks like a tag. Click on that tag and then you can add. So right now we're in the food and farm literacy and education. Great, you can add that tag. I'm gonna add access, I'm gonna add environment. So now my sticky has these 3 tags. So practice tagging one of your stickies. Good job.
Okay.
All right, seems like everyone's figured out the tag. Okay, you got it. Now I would like you to move the board so that you're viewing this part 2, assets, food and farm literacy and education. So join me down here. Yes, 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 yes. And we're gonna start filling in some assets. Assets should include these key components. So your sticky should include what the asset is, who the key contact is that might help us better understand that asset and why you think it's an asset for this particular group. So for example, an asset for this group might be the PCC culinary arts program. So I would grab my sticky and I would bring it over here. And then I would just start typing in these 3 items. So we're gonna take a couple of minutes and just type as fast as you can so that we get a good list going here.
So if I put one in food access that's actually both, should I have just tagged that with 2 tags?
You can tag it, exactly.
Okay.
We'll go back and tag after we get a list going here.
Okay, I'm gonna do other people then.
And get as many stickies as you want. We want 1 asset per sticky. Okay. And I'm seeing that we're bumping up to time here. And I unfortunately have another meeting to run at 3. So I'm gonna have to drop the Zoom line. But I think y'all kind of see where we're going. You have access to this link, and it would be great if you just spent, maybe 5 minutes now before you move on to your next thing for the day, to fill in as many assets as you can think of that really kind of align with the Food and Farm Literacy and Education group. And I see folks put in CSU Extension Master Gardeners, but would love a contact there. I see PCCLD Family and Adult Literacy, would love a contact there. So it's one thing to kind of list it out. It's another thing to get us to a point where we're feeling like, all right, we know exactly where we're going. Rebecca, thank you for letting me pick on you. And then if you're saying to yourself, hey, this asset, it's really has much more to it than just the Food and Farm Literacy group. In fact, it connects to a number of groups. That's when you would go back in and add your tag. So for the PCC Culinary Arts program, I'm also going to add an economy tag, for example. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for the time being, because we're bumping up to time. So essentially, if you take a look at the map, if you zoom all the way out for a second, and you see that so far, we've had, this is the 4th working group to kind of do this activity, and I have all of these great stickies. So what's going to happen next? You're like, well, why are we doing this? I'm going to sneak back in here. I'm going to be a little MERO elf, and I'm going to catalog all of the stickies. I'm going to put one color per working group. And then in our next conversation, we're going to take a look at how all of these start to relate. So we'll get to move things around. We'll get to play with kind of the priorities that we might want to focus on in terms of building relationships. We'll be able to see where we have gaps, and that will really help us start to develop the picture of what our food system looks like. So this is a slice of work group meetings that we'll be doing for the next couple of months to really kind of hammer out, what does the Pueblo food system really look like? What do we have? Who's working with who? How can we create deeper partnerships? Where do we need to celebrate more? Who needs a little more love? What are we missing? And that will come after we look at all of the really fabulous things that we already have going on. But this is just one way for us to all get a sense of what's really out there, because we are a group of many, but we all kind of have our own individual things. And so this is a chance for us to just see the bigger picture. Okay, with that, it is 3. And like I said, I do have to jump off. So I'm sorry for cutting it short. Feel free to play around in here as long as you like. I will be back with you. Hopefully you'll join us for the larger coalition meeting next week. And if not, we're back in a month to continue this work. So thank you very much for your contributions today. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.